Caleb McCoy rose in darkness. The cabin held no warmth. The stove cold from hours unattended. He pulled on yesterday's shirt, the fabric stiff with dried sweat and sawdust. His boots waited by the door. Leather cracked like drought-split earth. 4 hours sleep. Maybe 5 if he counted the minutes stolen leaning against the sawmill wall. He moved through the cabin without lighting the lamp. No point wasting oil when dawn would come soon enough. Rosie slept in the corner bed, her breath visible in the frigid air. 7 years old, and already learned to sleep through his leaving. The thought settled in his chest like a stone. The sawmill wanted him at dawn, 6 days a week. He fed lumber through screaming blades until his shoulders burned, and his ears rang with phantom noise. Then the afternoon shift at the smithy, pumping bellows until his hands blistered. Evenings he swept the general store. Pushing a broom through aisles he could navigate blind. 3 jobs. $3 short of what Rosie needed. The town still slept as he crossed the yard. November cold bit through his coat. Stars faded overhead, giving way to that gray hour before sunrise when the world holds its breath. His boot heels cracked ice in the wagon ruts. He needed firewood for breakfast. The cabin would be frozen when Rosie woke. The barn door groaned open. Hay smell and animal warmth, though they'd sold the horse months back. The woodpile stood against the far wall, split logs stacked neat. He'd done that last spring when he still had energy for such things. Caleb crossed the dirt floor. His legs felt heavy, weighted with more than exhaustion. He reached the woodpile and bent to gather an armload. Just rest a moment. Just sit. The hay bale offered itself. He lowered onto it. Wood still ungathered. His back found the barn wall. The position felt wrong, sitting when there was work, but his body refused to rise. 1 minute. He'd rest 1 minute. His eyes closed. The darkness behind his lids felt deeper than the barn shadows. Somewhere a rooster crowed. The sound came from very far away, as if he'd already fallen into some other country where nothing could reach him. His shoulders slumped sideways. His hand opened, releasing wood that clattered to the dirt. The cold seeped through his coat, through his shirt, down into his bones. He didn't feel it anymore. Through the barn door, visible in the gathering dawn. The cabin window showed dark and lifeless. No lamp burning, no warmth waiting, just empty glass reflecting a sky that lightened without him. Rosie McCoy woke to cold that hurt her chest. She pulled the quilt tighter. But the chill had already found her. The cabin felt wrong. Too quiet. Too dark. She sat up, looking toward her father's bed. Empty. The blankets lay twisted where he'd thrown them aside hours ago. Papa! Her voice sounded small in the silence. She waited, listening for his bootsteps, for the stove door creaking open, for the familiar sounds of morning. Nothing came. Rosie climbed from bed, her bare feet hitting floorboards cold as creek stones. She wore the flannel nightgown, 2 sizes too big, sleeves rolled up past her wrists. Her breath made small clouds. Papa, are you here? She checked behind the curtain that divided the cabin. Not there. The stove sat cold. No fire laid. No coffee smell. The water bucket wore a thin skin of ice. Fear crept up her spine. Papa always made the fire. Always. Rosie pulled on her day dress over the nightgown, fingers clumsy with cold and worry. Her shoes sat by the door, the ones that pinched her toes and showed leather worn through at the seams. She shoved her feet into them anyway, sighed. Frost covered everything. The yard looked strange in early light, colorless and hard. She hugged herself against the wind. Papa. The barn door stood slightly open. She ran toward it, feet slipping on frozen ground. Maybe he was feeding animals they didn't have anymore. Maybe he was fixing something that couldn't wait for daylight. The barn swallowed her into its dimness. Hay smell and dust motes floating in weak light from the door. She blinked, letting her eyes adjust. Then she saw him, slumped against the barn wall, head tilted at a wrong angle, one arm hanging loose. His face looked gray, lips slightly parted. He didn't move when she called his name. Papa, Papa. Wake up. Rosie knelt beside him, shaking his shoulder. The fabric of his coat felt frozen. She touched his cheek and jerked her hand back, ice cold, like touching winter itself. Please wake up. Please. He didn't stir. His chest rose and fell so slightly she had to watch hard to see it, but he breathed. He still breathed. Rosie knew what to do. Mrs. Whitlow lived just beyond the fence line, in the house with the big workshop behind it. Mrs. Whitlow knew things. Mrs. Whitlow could help. She ran, out of the barn, across the frosted yard, under the fence rail. Through the field that separated their property, her shoes slipped twice. She caught herself and kept running. The workshop door stood open despite the cold. Rosie burst through it, gasping. Anna Whitlow looked up from a workbench covered in wood shavings. She wore a canvas apron dusty with sawdust, her dark hair pulled back in a practical bun. Maybe 45 years old. Maybe 50. Lines around her eyes that spoke of years squinting at careful work. Rosie, child, what's wrong? It's Papa, in the barn. He won't wake up. He's so cold. Anna didn't ask questions. She grabbed a thick wool blanket from a peg and followed Rosie at a run. Her boots covered ground faster than Rosie's short legs could manage. By the time Rosie reached the barn again, Anna was already kneeling beside Caleb. She pressed fingers to his neck, checking for pulse. Her face tightened. Mr. McCoy, Caleb, can you hear me? She shook his shoulder, harder than Rosie had dared. His eyelids fluttered. A sound came from his throat, wordless and confused. Caleb, you're killing yourself. His eyes opened part way. Unfocused, lost. My daughter, he mumbled, words slurring together. Need shoes. Winter. I'm $3 short. Anna wrapped the blanket around him, tucking it tight. She looked at Rosie with an expression the girl couldn't quite read, sad and angry at once. Help me get him to his feet. We need him inside where it's warm. Anna built the fire while Caleb sat hunched at the table. She worked efficiently, kindling catching fast. Larger wood laid on with practiced hands. Rosie pressed close to her father's side, small hand gripping his sleeve. The cabin warmed slowly. Color returned to Caleb's face in patches, like spring thaw revealing frozen ground. He held a cup of water but hadn't drunk from it. When did you last sleep proper? Anna asked. I sleep. In a bed. For more than a few hours. Caleb said nothing. The answer lived in his silence. Anna crossed her arms, leaning against the cook stove. She'd learned to read men during 20 years. Married to a craftsman. Learned to see when pride became poison. When strength turned to stubbornness. Your wife, she said quietly. She passed 2 years back. Fever. 3 days from first cough to gone. I'm sorry. Mine went fast too. Heart gave out in the workshop. One moment planning a cabinet. Next moment on the floor. Caleb looked up at her, seeing her perhaps for the first time. A widow. Like him. Someone who understood that particular emptiness. How many jobs you working? Anna asked. 3. For how long? Since last winter. Anna shook her head. You keep this pace. Rosie's going to find you dead one morning. That, what you want. Her first memory being the day her papa worked himself into the ground. I provide for her. You're dying for her. There's a difference. The words hit like fists. Caleb's jaw tightened. His hands curled around the water cup until knuckles showed white. Dup meaty. Rosie looked between them, frightened by the tension. She'd seen her father angry before. But this felt different. Sharper. More dangerous to something fragile. Anna let the silence stretch. Then she spoke again. Softer. I've got a proposal. Come by my workshop this afternoon. Let me show you something. She left before he could refuse. The door closed behind her, and the cabin felt smaller without her presence. Rosie tugged her father's sleeve. Are you going to go? I don't need charity. What's charity? When someone gives you things because they feel sorry for you. Rosie considered this. Mrs. Whitlow didn't look sorry. She looked mad. Caleb almost smiled. Almost. That afternoon, he walked to Anna's workshop with Rosie trailing beside him. The building stood solid and well kept, larger than he'd expected. Through the open door, he saw tools hung on walls, workbenches organized with a precision that spoke of mastery. Anna stood planing a board, long curls of wood peeling away beneath the blade. She looked up when they entered. This is what I'm offering, she said, setting down the plane. My husband built furniture, best in 3 counties. When he died, I kept the business going. But I'm a designer, not a craftsman. I can see what needs making. I can't always make it. She gestured to the workshop. I need help. Real help. Someone I can train. Someone I can trust to do quality work. You work for me properly. 1 job, fair hours, fair wage. I teach you the trade. I don't know carpentry. You'll learn. You've got the hands for it. If you stop destroying them with that sawmill. Caleb's pride stirred. You can't handle dying before she's grown. The words cut clean. Anna stepped closer, her voice firm but not unkind. I need a partner. Mr. McCoy. Not a favor case. This helps me as much as you, but you work 1 job, proper hours, or you don't work for me at all. I won't enable a man killing himself. Dick, no. Rosie had wandered to the corner where finished pieces waited for delivery. A small table, chairs with carved backs, a hope chest with dovetailed corners. She ran her hand over the smooth wood, eyes wide. It's beautiful, she whispered. Caleb watched his daughter's wonder, saw how she touched the furniture like it was something precious. He looked down at his own hands, scarred, calloused, bleeding in places where blisters had torn open. $3 short. Always $3 short of enough. I'll think on it, he said. Anna nodded. You know where to find me. Walking home, Rosie slipped her hand into his. Her fingers felt small and cold. He looked down and noticed her shoes for the first time in weeks. 2 sizes too small, leather cracked, her toes visible through the worn seams. $3. Such a small amount. Such an impossible distance. Monday morning arrived cold and clear. Caleb stood outside Anna's workshop, pride warring with necessity. The sawmill would be waiting. So would the smithy. He'd sent word to both that he was quitting. The words had felt like surrender. He pushed open the workshop door. Anna glanced up from measuring a board. "You came." "I came." "Good. Hang your coat on that peg. We start with basics." The workshop smelled of fresh-cut wood and linseed oil. Morning light slanted through high windows, catching dust motes and golden beams. Tools lined the walls in orderly rows, each in its place. The organization itself felt like a rebuke to his scattered life. "Near Lane's house." Anna handed him a piece of pine and a chisel. "Make a groove. 1 inch from the edge, 1/4 inch deep, straight as you can manage." And his hands, used to brutal labor, approached the delicate work like a bull entering a pottery shop. The chisel slipped, gouging too deep. He swore under his breath. "The wood will teach you patience if you let it," Anna said. She moved behind him, her hands guiding his. "Feel the grain. Work with it, not against it. The tree spent 50 years growing. You can spend 5 minutes learning its nature." Her touch was impersonal, instructive, but something in it steadied him. She wasn't judging his failure. She was teaching toward his success. They worked through morning. Anna showed him how to measure twice, cut once, how to test joints before gluing, how to read wood for its strengths and weaknesses. His hands ached from the unfamiliar precision. At midday, she stopped. "We eat now." "I can work through." "We eat. Fair hours means fair breaks." And she'd brought bread and cheese, apples from someone's cold cellar. They sat on the workbench edge, eating in companionable silence. Caleb couldn't remember the last time he'd stopped for a proper meal. The afternoon passed in similar rhythm. Work, correction, improvement. Anna's patience never wavered, but neither did her standards. When he rushed, she made him slow down. When he doubted, she showed him proof of his progress. At dusk, she set down her tools. "That's enough for today. It's not dark yet. It's enough. Go home to your daughter." And the words felt foreign. Go home, not collapse into bed after midnight. Not grab a few hours before the next shift. Go home while daylight still held. Walking back to the cabin, Caleb noticed things he'd stopped seeing. The way sunset painted the hills copper, how smoke rose straight in the still air, the sound of his own footsteps. Unhurried, Rosie met him at the door, face bright with surprise. "You're home." "I am." "Can we eat supper together?" He looked at her. Really looked. When had she started braiding her own hair? When had her face thinned, losing the last baby? Roundness. "We can eat supper together." They shared beans and cornbread at the small table. Rosie chattered about school, about the reader she was working through, about the girl who'd shared her lunch when Rosie forgot hers. Caleb listened, realizing he'd forgotten the sound of his daughter's voice in conversation. That night, lying in bed, he didn't collapse into unconsciousness. He rested. The difference felt strange, unearned somehow. But his hands, aching from the day's careful work, held a different kind of soreness. Not the dull throb of damage, but the sharp ache of muscles learning new patterns. He closed his eyes and, for the first time in months, simply slept. Winter deepened. Weeks passed in the steady rhythm of the workshop. Caleb's hands, once weapons of brute force, learned gentleness. Anna taught him to feel the whisper of wood grain, to let the chisel find its natural path. His first solo project sat before him. A step stool. 3 steps. Mortise and tenon joints. Nothing fancy, but solid. Useful. Anna examined it, testing each joint with careful pressure. Good work. The second step's a hair crooked, but it'll hold. I can start over. It's good work. Caleb, let it be good enough. He wrapped the step stool in canvas and carried it home that evening. Rosie was setting the table, standing on a crate to reach the high shelf where her mother's things were stored. Made you something. Caleb said. He unwrapped the stool. Rosie's eyes went wide. You made this just finished today? She ran her hands over the wood, feeling the smooth surfaces, the solid joints. Then she dragged it to the shelf and climbed up. Her hand closed around a small wooden box painted with flowers. Mama's recipes, she breathed. I've wanted to reach them for so long. She opened the box carefully. Lifting out papers covered in careful handwriting, tears ran down her face, but she smiled through them. Something cracked in Caleb's chest. He knelt beside the stool, eye level with his daughter, and pulled her into his arms. She clung to him, crying into his shoulder. Recipe box clutched tight. I miss her, Rosie whispered. I know, baby. I miss her too. They stayed like that while the stove ticked and evening settled around them. The step stool stood beneath them, bearing their combined weight without complaint. Strong enough, good enough. The next day, Anna shared her story while they worked. Her husband had died suddenly, mid-project, leaving her with a business she barely understood. I thought about selling, she said, planing a board to exact thickness. Would have been easier, but Jacob built this. His father taught him, and his father before that. Felt wrong to let it die. How'd you learn? By making every mistake possible. Ruined a lot of good wood. But the craft teaches, if you're willing to be taught. She paused, checking the board with her practiced eye. I learned something else too. Pride kills more dreams than failure ever did. Asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. At month's end. Anna handed him an envelope. Inside, bills and coins that added up to more than his 3 jobs combined had paid. Caleb stared at the money. This is too much. It's fair wage for fair work. You've earned it. That evening, he took Rosie to the general store. The shopkeeper showed them winter boots, sturdy leather, with thick soles and room to grow. These, Caleb said. Rosie tried them on, face glowing. She walked up and down the store aisle, testing them. They don't pinch. They're not supposed to pinch. At home. She lined the boots up carefully beside her bed. Before sleeping, she climbed down to touch them, making sure they were real. Caleb watched from the doorway. $3. The gap that had nearly killed him. Bridged. But more than that, he'd been awake to see her joy. He'd been present when she needed him. He thought of the barn. That cold morning when death had nearly won. Thought of Anna's words. You're killing yourself. Not anymore. Not today. January brought bitter cold and a new commission. A customer wanted a cabinet by week's end. Possible, but tight. Anna laid out the plans, confident in their rhythm. The customer returned midweek. I need it sooner. Day after tomorrow. Anna shook her head. We agreed on a week. Quality work takes time. I'll pay extra. The timeline stands. After the customer left. Caleb felt the old anxiety stirring. Someone was dissatisfied. Someone thought them slow, insufficient, that night. He walked to the sawmill. The foreman looked surprised. Thought you quit? Need the night shift. Just temporary. Obviously. The foreman hesitated. You sure you look like you've been sleeping for once? I'm sure. And the first night back, exhaustion hit like a physical blow. But Caleb pushed through. Feeding boards into the screaming saw, breathing sawdust, counting hours until dawn. Then straight to Anna's workshop. She noticed immediately the tremor in his hands, the red-rimmed eyes, the way he measured the same board twice. Forgetting the first result, she said nothing, but her mouth tightened. After 3 days, Caleb was miscutting pieces, wasting wood, slowing down more than helping. Anna examined a cabinet frame he'd assembled. The corners didn't meet true. You're working nights again. And then Oscar, right? Nah. Schwarty signed here. Not a question. A statement of fact. Just until we catch up. We're not behind. We're exactly where we should be. That customer will get quality work on the timeline we agreed to. If he wants faster, he can go elsewhere. Caleb's pride flared. I can handle both. Can you? That Saturday. Anna invited Rosie to the workshop. The girl came eagerly. Thrilled to see her father's workplace. She brought her school reader. Planning to practice while they worked, but Caleb. Running on 3 hours of sleep. Barely registered her presence. She chattered about a story she'd read. About a friend's birthday. About the snow predicted for next week. He grunted responses without looking up. Rosie's voice trailed off. She sat in the corner, reader unopened, watching her father with hurt in her eyes. Anna saw it. The child's face closing down. The familiar loneliness returning. When Rosie left for home, Anna stopped Caleb. I need to speak plain with you. I'm listening. Choose my workshop or the sawmill. You can't do both and be worth anything to either. I'm keeping up. You just made your daughter feel invisible. You just wasted a morning's worth of wood. You're not keeping up. You're falling apart. Her voice stayed level, but her eyes held steel. I need a partner I can trust. Caleb. Not a man killing himself to prove something to ghosts. The words hit like hammers. Ghosts. His wife's memory. The belief that suffering equaled love. What if I'm not enough? He said quietly. What if one job isn't enough to keep her fed and clothed? You made more in 1 month here than 3 months at those other jobs. You know that's true. So what's this really about? Caleb had no answer. Or rather, had too many answers tangling together. Fear and pride, and the stubborn belief that accepting help made him weak. I'll quit the sawmill, he said. Good. Do it tonight. Then go home and sleep for 12 hours. He did quit. But resentment followed him home like a shadow. For days. He worked with Anna in sullen silence, meeting her instructions with curt nods, avoiding her eyes. The cabinet finished on time. The customer picked it up satisfied. But the victory felt hollow. Caleb knew he was wrong. Knew Anna had saved him from sliding back into the darkness. But admitting it felt like admitting defeat. Sunday afternoon. The cabin felt too small. Walls pressing in. Caleb walked out to clear his head. His feet carried him to the barn without conscious decision. The place where Rosie had found him, frozen. The place where he'd nearly died. Inside. The cold and hay smell wrapped around him. He stood where he'd collapsed that morning, looking at the wall he'd slumped against. A sound made him turn. Rosie sat on a hay bale, crying. His wife's shawl wool, faded blue, moth-eaten, clutched in her small hands. Rosie. She looked up, tears tracking down her face. I thought you were getting better, but you're still leaving. The words pierced him. I'm right here. No, you're not. You're gone again, like before. Working all the time and not seeing me. She wiped her eyes with the shawl. I thought when you started working for Mrs. Whitlow, I thought I'd get my papa back. And I did, for a little while. But now you're angry and far away again. Caleb sat beside her on the hay bale. The same hay bale where death had nearly won. I'm sorry. Do you like making things with Mrs. Whitlow? The question surprised him. He considered it honestly. I do, he said slowly. I didn't expect to, but I do. The work feels different. Like I'm building something instead of just surviving. Then why did you go back to the sawmill? Because I was scared. I did. Gracia stature, I staff so bear what if that one job wouldn't be enough, that I'd fail you like I failed your mama. I may hi. Rosie turned to look at him. You didn't fail Mama. She got sick. That's not failing. I mean, from a 7-year-old. The wisdom cut deep. She was right. He'd been carrying guilt for something beyond his control, punishing himself for not preventing the impossible. Mama wouldn't want you in this barn, Rosie said quietly. She'd want you at home, at supper. She'd want you to teach me things and tell me stories and be my papa, not just someone who works. Or... Her small hand found his. I don't need fancy things. I just need you to be there. They sat together while afternoon light slanted through the barn door. Caleb held his daughter, held his wife's shawl, held the truth that he'd been running from. He'd been working himself to death, not for Rosie's sake, but to avoid facing his own grief, to avoid the empty bed, the quiet evenings, the knowledge that he had to be both parents now. Exhaustion had been an escape. I'll do better, he said. I promise. That night, after Rosie slept, Caleb walked to Anna's workshop. She was still there, finishing a rocking chair by lamplight. She looked up when he entered. I was wrong, he said, about the sawmill, about handling everything alone, about all of it. Anna set down her tools. I know. I don't know how to do this, how to be enough. None of us do. We just do the best we can with what we have. He looked around the workshop, the organized tools, the partially finished projects, the evidence of sustainable work, purposeful effort. Teach me, he said, not just carpentry, but how you did this. How you kept going after your husband died. How you built something lasting. Anna smiled. The first real smile he'd seen from her in days. That's what I've been trying to do. She poured them both coffee from a pot on the wood stove. They sat on workbenches, talking late into the night about grief and survival and the long road from despair to hope. When Caleb finally walked home, stars burned cold overhead. But inside, something had shifted. He'd faced the barn's ghosts and chosen life. Chosen presence over martyrdom. Tomorrow, he'd start again. But this time, he wouldn't run. Spring fought its way through winter's grip. Days lengthened. Ice retreated. Anna and Caleb received their largest commission, yet a full dining set for the new hotel. Here ain't by. Table. 12 chairs. Sideboard. Work that would take weeks. We can do this, Anna said. Studying the plans, we can... They fell into rhythm perfected over months of partnership. Anna designed. Caleb executed. Both refining as they went. The table took shape first. Oak chosen for strength and grain pattern. Each board selected with care. Joined with dovetails that would hold for generations. Caleb's hands moved with confidence now. The brutal laborer's hands had transformed into craftsman's hands, still strong but capable of precision. Anna watched him work and saw the change, not just in skill, but in spirit. You've become a craftsman, she said one afternoon. A real one. Learned from the best. Your teacher was a stubborn woman who didn't know when to quit. Sounds familiar. And they smiled at each other across the workshop. Partnership had deepened into friendship. Two widows who'd survived their separate griefs. Building something together. The chairs came next, each one requiring hours of careful work. Caleb cut the spindles. Anna shaped the seats. Rosie sometimes came after school, doing homework in the corner or helping sand smaller pieces. The workshop had become a second home. No, my secretary died. One evening, working late on the final chair, Caleb looked up to find Anna bringing him coffee. Rosie slept in the corner, wrapped in a blanket, having insisted on staying to see the project finished. The image struck him, a child sleeping peacefully near her father, knowing he'd be there when she woke. No fear, no cold barn, just trust. We should talk about the future, Anna said, handing him the coffee. What about it? This partnership. We should make it official. Equal shares. Equal say. Equal profit. You've earned it. Caleb set down his tools. You're offering me half your business. I'm offering us a business together. You're not my employee anymore. Haven't been for months. It's time the paperwork reflected that. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Or say no. But decide based on what you want. Not what you think you deserve. You deserve it. Caleb, you've proven that 100 times over. He thought of the sawmill, the smithy, the general store, 3 jobs that had nearly killed him. Got this thina, then thought of this workshop, this craft, this partnership that had saved his life. Yes. He said, yes, I want this. They shook hands, a formal gesture that felt right. Partners, equal partners. The next day, they delivered the dining set to the hotel. The owner examined each piece, testing joints, running his hands over smooth surfaces. This is exceptional work. I'll be recommending you to everyone I know. Walking home that evening, Caleb felt something he'd forgotten existed. Pride. Not the destructive pride that refused help, but the honest pride of good work done well. Rosie ran ahead, boots splashing through spring puddles. New boots, because she'd outgrown the winter ones, and he'd been there to notice, to buy the next size, to help her pick them out. Everything had changed, not through dramatic rescue, but through steady choice, through accepting help, through learning that sustainable work was itself an act of love. My pa, 1 year later, Caleb woke to sunlight streaming through the cabin window. No alarm. No frantic rush. Just natural waking. Birdsong filtered through the walls. The stove was already crackling. Rosie had learned to build the morning fire. He lay for a moment, simply resting. This simple act, waking slowly, at peace, still felt like a gift. "Hey, Papa. Breakfast is ready." Rosie stood at the stove, proud of her cooking. Eggs and biscuits. Nothing fancy, but made with care. 8 years old now. Growing tall. Losing the last baby softness from her face. They ate together at the table Caleb had built, using plates Anna had turned on her wood lathe. Everything in the cabin held someone's craftsmanship. Everything had been made with purpose. "I'm going to tell Mrs. Whitlow my idea about the rocking chair today," Rosie said between bites. "Are these staying?" "The balance thing you mentioned, if we curve the runners more on the back, it won't tip as easy when people stand up. I drew a picture." Caleb smiled. "That's smart thinking. We'll show her together." He walked Rosie to school. Something he did every morning now. They talked about her arithmetic homework, about the book she was reading, about her plans to help in the workshop on Saturday, simple conversations that had once felt impossible. At the workshop, Anna already had coffee brewing. She looked up from her sketches. "Rosie has a design suggestion." Caleb said, "Let's see it." Rosie produced her careful drawing. Anna studied it, nodding thoughtfully. "This could work. Let's build a test piece and see." The morning passed in comfortable work rhythm. Caleb trained 2 young apprentices now, teaching them what Anna had taught him: patience, precision, respect for the craft. The circle continuing. At midday, they broke for lunch. Anna had brought stew from her kitchen. Enough to share. They ate in the workshop yard, enjoying spring sunshine. "We've got 3 new commissions," Anna said, "all from hotel recommendations. We'll need to hire another craftsman soon. The business is growing." "Din, ja." "It is. Your business too. Partner." The word still carried weight. Partner. Not employee. Not charity case. Not someone scraping by. A craftsman with a trade and a future. Evening came gently. Caleb finished his last project of the day, a hope chest for a young couple getting married. Calm. He ran his hand over the smooth lid, checking joints one final time. Good work. Something that would last. Walking home, he noticed the season, trees budding, first wildflowers in the meadow, the air soft with promise. He'd worked through too many springs without seeing them. Never again. At home, Rosie set the table while Caleb cooked supper. They worked together in easy silence, the kind of comfort that comes from being truly present with each other. After eating, after dishes, after Rosie's reading practice, they sat on the porch. Stars emerged overhead. The barn stood quiet in the darkness. Just a barn now, not a place of defeat, but simply a building for storing firewood. Papa. Rosie leaned against his shoulder. "Yeah. I'm glad you work with Mrs. Whitlow." "Me too. You smile more now, and you're here." Simple words. Profound truth. Caleb wrapped his arm around his daughter. She'd needed shoes that winter, and he'd nearly killed himself for $3. But what she'd really needed was this, a father present for supper. For conversation. For the quiet moments that build a life. He thought of Anna's words that cold morning in the barn. "You're killing yourself." She'd been right, and she'd offered him salvation, not through charity, but through partnership. Through teaching him that sustainable labor was an act of love, the lamp burned warm in the cabin window. Smoke rose lazy from the chimney. Rosie's boots waited by the door, ready for tomorrow. Tools rested in the workshop, ready for work that would come with dawn. Everything in its place. A life not perfect, but whole. Caleb had learned the hardest lesson the frontier could teach. That working yourself to death helps no one you love. That sustainable labor is an act of love. That a man who accepts help isn't weak. He's wise enough to build something lasting. The stars wheeled overhead. The night settled around them like a blessing. And Caleb McCoy, carpenter, father, partner, was finally home.